Jerome. Hi, Jerome.
Hi, Alexis. How are you?
Doing good. I'm excited to talk to you today a little bit about your experience living in another country. So, for our new listeners, can you introduce yourself and where you're from and where you live now?
Absolutely. My name is Jerome. I am from Ireland originally. By the way, happy St. Patrick's Day today.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
And I live in Colombia in South America, not to be confused with Colombia with a U in North America. So I live in Colombia in the capital city of Bogota. And most Irish people, because I don't know if you know a lot about the economics of Ireland, but our main export is people. So,
Know that.
generally, as soon as people finish high school or university, they disappear, they leave. So I left Ireland as soon as I finished university in 2010. I moved to South Korea. I lived there for 4 years. And after that, I moved back to Ireland, worked as a fisherman. That was a bit of a dark year for me. And then I moved to Colombia in 2015, I think. And I've lived here ever since. So that's me. How about you? You're an immigrant as well, aren't you? Or an expat? I don't really know the difference.
Yes, I am. So I am from the United States. I was born in Alaska, and then I lived in Tennessee most of my life. When I was 27, I moved to my first country abroad in Honduras. I lived on a little island called Roatan in the Caribbean and lived there almost 5 years. That's when I worked in the scuba diving industry.
Nice.
And then after COVID, I became a teacher and moved to Ecuador, which is the neighbor of your country, Colombia. And I've been here for years now.
Perfect. Very good. So how do you like being an immigrant?
I think everyone should try it.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a great life experience. And one word you mentioned earlier, expat. That's one of our vocab words today, expatriate. Or a lot of times we shorten it like you did, expat. So just so you guys know, that is someone who is living in a foreign country.
Is there a difference between an expat and an immigrant, or is it just a sort of a different term for the same thing?
I think it's about the same thing, just different terms. Would you say?
I feel that like the word expat is a much nicer word than immigrant to describe a person. Like it's the same word but in a different light. Like sometimes the word immigrant is often associated with like maybe being you would say, for example, an illegal immigrant, but you would never say an illegal expat. So I often feel it's the same word, but it's kind of painted differently.
I think the only difference I can think of is, yes, it's people living outside their native country, but expat usually refers to someone living abroad for a limited time, 3 months, 3 years for work or something.
Yeah,
Where
definitely.
an immigrant, usually they move to that new country and they stay there the rest of their life.
Right, yeah. There's kind of an association that if you're an expat, you're kind of, I'm here for fun, but I don't need to be here. Whereas an immigrant is like, I have to be here because there's nowhere else for me to go. So I think there's kind of a different perspective. It's viewed differently, but it's more or less the same thing.
Could you actually we have 5 words I want to go over. One of them was expatriate. The second one is acculturation. What's that mean, Jerome?
Acculturation. So acculturation would be sort of how quickly you can adapt to a new culture. So that would not only be like the language, but how you would also, it could be how quickly you get to know the neighbors, how quickly you adapt to a culture would be acculturation. So obviously some countries would be easier and some would be harder. So what about you, Alexis? How has living in the US made living in Ecuador? How easy has that acculturation been? Has it been a big jump, a big difference for you? Or is it kind of similar?
I mean, I had prior experience living in a foreign country, but there definitely were going on to our other word, culture shocks. I wasn't aware of how safe the US is, whereas Ecuador, generally, yes, it is safe, but you have to be very vigilant living here. There's certain things that you can't do that I could do in the US. For example, walk around using my cell phone on the street. Here, you can't do that because someone might take it. So, yes, definitely.
Yeah, you have to be more on guard, definitely. I think that's true. Yeah. I noticed that when I go back to Ireland on holiday, I have it's what my friends call post-traumatic stress disorder. So they always make fun of me because I'm always like checking to see if I've been pickpocketed or if I've got all my keys and wallet and things like that. I remember that when I lived in South Korea, you could very casually put your phone on the table in a busy bar, and you could go to the bathroom and come back, and it would be guaranteed to still be there, which was very nice as well. And I think living in South Korea made me a little bit soft because it was hard to relearn that paranoia that I had forgotten, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Same in Roatan. It was very safe, but it was a foreign country. So I felt like, oh, I dipped my toe into living in a foreign country. But Ecuador, it was the true, like, they threw me in the deep end.
Very good. So for our listeners, to jump or to be thrown into the deep end basically means like a very intense immersion. Yes. Like,
also, one other phrase I wanted to mention that's a good one to use. So when you're living here, we say you have to keep your head on a swivel. And it just means you're paying attention to your surroundings at all times.
Very good. What does it mean to swivel?
To rotate in a circle, turn.
Yeah. I notice I do that when I'm walking in the street. I kind of have a 360 vision. So I'm always moving my head around, checking my 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock.
Eyes in the back of your head.
Eyes in the back of your head, exactly. Yeah. Very good. What is culture shock?
So it's when you see something that is completely different from your culture and you can't really understand why they would do that. Or, but like the definition says here, the feeling of disorientation or discomfort when experiencing a new or unfamiliar culture.
Very good. The word shock is similar to a surprise, but a shock is normally a bad surprise. Like a surprise could be like a surprise birthday party. Happy birthday! That would be a nice surprise, but a shock is usually something bad. So a culture shock would be... can you give me an example? Have you experienced any culture shock yourself?
I think one of the classic ones is not being able to put the toilet paper in the toilet. Instead, you have to put it in the trash bin.
Oh my God, I forgot that. Yeah, because I've been doing that for so long. I do that when I visit Ireland as well because it's just, I can't unlearn it now.
Yeah, it used to be ew, and now it's like, oh, totally normal.
Of course, the plumbing can't support it. Makes sense.
Yep.
Very good.
All right. Actually, we have another list just because I changed one word on here. So if you don't mind, scroll down a little bit for me.
That's the second list there.
Thank you. Okay, so just two other words really quick. Integration, the process of becoming part of a different culture or society. Can you give us an example of that, Jerome?
Integration? Obviously learning the language is one thing. Learning the cultural norms. It's would also be, I suppose, just fitting in.
Making friends.
Exactly. Yeah. There's another spectrum which I've noticed varies a lot between countries, which is how direct or how subtle people are. So some people are, like in some cultures, some people are very, very harsh, and they will always tell you exactly what they mean. where honesty is more important. So the spectrum is kind of between honesty and politeness. And some countries, and I would say Germany, value honesty more. So if somebody says, "What do you think of my cooking?" It's disgusting. Don't ever give it to me again. Whereas on the other hand, like Japan, which I would say will be another extreme, politeness will always trump or be more important than honesty. So even if it's disgusting, you say, delicious. I've never eaten something so nice in my whole life.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
something that you have to get used to, which can be hard.
Yes, that's a really good example. Okay. Well, let's talk about it and your experience in particular. So, what motivated you to move from Ireland to Colombia, and how did you prepare for such a big change?
I didn't prepare at all, to be honest. In terms of learning the language, I think I remember. Well, it wasn't. I'm exaggerating now, but I remember looking at my guidebook, and when I was in Colombian immigration, I was looking at my guidebook. Hello in Spanish. Hola. Hola igual hello. Okay. Hola, and they were like, "Yeah, okay, tourist, come on in." They had no patience for me. So I kind of jumped in the deep end since I never learned Spanish in school. We learned French in school, but we didn't learn it very well. You know, large class sizes, je suis, tu es, just repeating verbs. And it wasn't done very well. So it was pretty tough. That was difficult for me, definitely. Anything else? I would say, luckily for me, the culture in Ireland and Colombia are quite similar.
Okay.
So they're both kind of Roman Catholic countries, and you feel like a lot of similarities between like how people act with each other, the family values. They're very, very similar. So that was quite easy to get used to, actually. So I was very lucky with that, definitely.
Nice. Well, you mentioned you didn't know Spanish before. So, what kind of challenges did you face with the local language, and how did you manage to overcome those?
Well, good question. One thing that I did was I talked to a lot of my neighbors, but my neighbors weren't always the best people to learn Spanish from, because from them I learned a very specific type of Spanish that wasn't
Mhm.
suitable in every situation. For example, I learned that the way to say hello to somebody or "how's it going" from my neighbors when I first came here in the first couple of months was "que hay marica," right?
Very
Which,
polite.
yeah, which is basically means "what up," like what up, homosexual. Basically, that's what it means. Yeah. So I used this in a job interview, right? I remember going into a job interview using this phrase, and my interviewer was like, "Oh my god, where did
They're
you
like,
learn
we'll
that?" You know,
call
so
you.
good but wrong setting. So that was an issue as well.
um, Now, what can you share a memorable experience or a story when you had an interaction with a local Colombian that changed your perspective on life abroad?
Hmm. Yes, actually, I can. So we have this strange kind of culture. You see it in Ireland. You see it a lot in England. My mom's British, so I learned a lot of these things from her. But if somebody offers you something, like let's say somebody offers you a drink, or maybe somebody offers you a slice of cake, okay?
Mhm.
Now, in England or in Ireland as well, it's generally seen to be respectful to pretend you're not hungry even if you are. Like if somebody says, "Would you like the last slice of cake?" You say, "Oh, thank you, but I'm absolutely full. I couldn't eat another bite." And that's basically my way of saying, "I don't want to eat your food because I know that you are being polite by offering it, but I don't want to take your resources because they're yours. You bought the cake, you made the cake. It's not fair for me to eat the cake." And this was turned on its head when I came to Colombia. Because in Colombia, I'm not sure if it's the same in Ecuador, but if somebody offers you a slice of cake and you say no, It kind of translates as, I wouldn't eat that because I don't trust your cooking and that's disgusting and I won't eat your food because you can't be trusted and you probably don't know how to make good food. So it's considered really offensive not to eat. So the politest thing to do in Colombia is eat the food and then demand more, which for me is really, really difficult. Like, that was delicious. Do you have any more? Which is a little offensive in Ireland, but in Colombia, this is like the greatest honor. Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
He loves my food, you know? So yeah.
And yeah, it's definitely the same here. And I always say yes, but just give me a little bit, just a little, not the big major portion they like to give.
Right. No, I just demand more. I hold out my hand. That was amazing. Give me more. It goes against everything I believe in, but I've acclimatized myself. Acculturation, as we said there earlier.
Absolutely.
So one more word I see on this list, and that's a digital nomad. What is a nomad, first of all, Alexis?
Someone that moves around, like a long time ago, the cavemen would kind of be nomadic and live here and use the resources. And then when they need new resources, they would move.
Right. So some cavemen, before they discovered agriculture, they'd move to an area, they'd eat all the apples, they'd say, no more apples. And then they'd say, hey, apples in the next valley, and then move on to another area with more food and let that area replenish.
Yes.
Are there any societies that are nomadic today, Alexis, that generally don't live in the same area, that are nomadic?
Gypsies.
Gypsies, yeah. Very good. Good example, yeah. Hobos, maybe, are kind of nomadic as well. Yep. The Mongolians, the Mongolian Empire was nomadic originally. They would move around with their animals from place to place. Once the animals had eaten all the grass, they would move on to the next area. So they were nomadic as well. What is a digital nomad, though?
Like ourselves, someone that works a remote job, and it doesn't matter where you're located in the world. So some remote jobs may require you to be in the United States, whereas digital nomad is you use your computer while you're traveling, basically.
That's right. Yeah, most jobs can be done from a laptop, and a lot of people don't need anything more than Wi-Fi, so that's all they need, and you can get Wi-Fi anywhere. So they will move from place to place and maybe stay in Airbnbs or guest houses and see the world while they're working.
Yeah, you can volunteer at hostels as well. It's a good way to do digital nomad work and affordable travel.
Very good. Yep. Do you think it's difficult for a digital nomad because they must spend a lot of time traveling? Do you think this interrupts their schedule? Like, do you think it's because if you're constantly flying or taking buses or trains from place to place, do you think this makes it hard for people to move around? Or to work
probably
properly?
at first, but I think you can kind of get used to any working style. So you would just have to. The other nice thing about if you are a freelancer, you control your schedule. So you should be able to make your schedule accommodate that.
That's true. Yeah.
It's not so stressful. But
I noticed that you're in some kind of museum today, Alexis. You're not in your usual podcast studio. So are you a bit of a digital nomad? You're working from your laptop today? Okay.
Yes. Yes. I'm working from a different location. So I just bring my computer, my laptop with me that already has the camera, the microphone, everything. So it's very portable. And yeah, I mean, I've even taught classes like on the beach before.
Wow. Okay. I don't think I would be able to see the screen with all the light. I wouldn't be able to see the screen properly. I don't know if I could concentrate on the beach. I think I'd be too distracted. But I like the idea of it. I've always been jealous of people, and I could theoretically do the same thing. There's nothing stopping me. Well, my computer is about 20 kilograms. I don't have a laptop. But I could theoretically do it.
I think that was a bit of an emergency situation, but yes. So let's see. What did you find most surprising or interesting about living in Colombia compared to your life in Ireland?
Most surprising. Who, who. Probably the lack of seasons. That's one thing, because I'm right on the equator. Having no, and I mean literally no seasons, there is zero difference between December and June here. So this kind of distorts, for our listeners, distorts means kind of confuses. It distorts your feeling of time. So Ireland is very seasonal, and we have a lot of holidays that represent that. Like in October, there's a lot of harvests, and we have a lot of festivals like Halloween or Oktoberfest, where people kind of celebrate the end of the year. Whereas here, the years all kind of blend into one, and it's the time can slip away very, very easily.
Yeah, it goes by quicker. I live right below the equator line, so summertime is in December for me. So yeah, very strange.
But is there much of a difference between summer and winter? No.
15 degrees Celsius difference.
Right, yeah, not a lot. Oh, actually, that's more than here. That's more than here, yeah.
Okay, my last question for you. This is my deep one.
No.
Have you noticed any major changes in yourself since moving abroad? And how has living in Colombia affected your outlook on life or your mindset?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if it's because of living in another country or whether it's a question of age, but I feel that I've become a little bit more conservative after living abroad. So when I was in Ireland and I was, I suppose, a university student, life is beautiful and anything is possible. And I suppose I'm a bit more defensive and a bit more, I suppose, libertarian now. Because I suppose that, like every country, there's a lot of corruption. So generally, I'm more kind of, I suppose, isolated from things like. Also, I guess because I'm not able to vote, because I can't vote in Colombia because I'm not a Colombian citizen. I suppose I've kind of separated myself from politics, which is actually quite liberating. Because my one vote doesn't really make much of a difference. I know that's a terrible thing to say, but I can kind of relax because there's nothing I can do, if that makes sense. And if it gets too bad, I'll just leave. So
I completely understand with the political climate in the US right now. Yeah, I'm very happy here.
Yeah. There's nothing I can do about it, so just sort of you try not to think about it and you move on and do what you can do for yourself, but you don't depend or expect anything really from, at least I don't, from the Colombian government.
Right. Well, thanks for kind of sharing some more personal information about yourself, and I think our listeners will appreciate this. Do you have any advice for our ESL learners that maybe are considering moving abroad?
Yeah, I'd say do what we did and jump into the deep end. Yeah.
Do it. Why not?
There's really a limit to how much you can really prepare yourself before you go. Like, research is great, and definitely learning the language will really help. It was really hard for me in the beginning because I had nothing to grab onto. Fortunately, English and Spanish are not that different. So you can guess what a word is most of the time in Spanish, and you'll know what it is in English, and vice versa. But in a lot of languages, in a lot of countries where there is nothing tangible, like I remember in Korea, the Spanish word for information is información. You can guess that. However, when you're jumping to a country that has really no Latin origin or roots, it's definitely you'll have a better experience if you know a bit of the language before you go. Definitely, that's my only advice.
Yep. Or worst case scenario, you can use a translator.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again. And if you guys have any comments or questions, you can leave those. And thanks for listening.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. All the best.
Bye.
Bye.